A long-standing feud between rap artist Drake and Kendrick Lamar is once again heating up after the release of diss tracks back to back.
If you haven't been living under a rock for the past month or so, then I'm sure you've heard about the insane beef that's been going on between Kendrick Lamar aka Mr.Morale and Drake aka Drizzy. Canadian rapper Drake and American rapper Kendrick Lamar have been involved in a rap feud since the early 2010s. While things started out amicably between the two, a battle of flared egos and ambition ensued, a spiral that led to the highly publicized drama. It may have ended now with Kendrick being declared the clear winner, but the music industry has never seen such an iconic clash in ages, especially in the era of social media. Apart from some slick jabs and very serious accusations, the business side of things have been great as well.
Monster on the beat, ho, Debo, any rap nigga, he a freak throw, man down, call her Amber Lambs, tell him breathe, bro.
The rappers spent weeks releasing songs featuring insults and innuendos aimed at one another, and after several cuts arrived, now they're both quiet. But that's probably because Kendrick's final shot, Not Like Us, is ruling the charts, not just in America, but all over the world. His latest disses have been dominating the Billboard charts ever since their first tracking week had been completed. By the end of it, we can say that Mr.Morale has won the battle of artistry, as well as sales.
Kendrick Lamar!
But who really won the war in the overall picture, and how much money was generated in the middle of this beef? That's exactly what we're here to figure out. Chapter 1: Revenue and Milestones. According to Hits Daily Double, Not Like Us became a certified banger instantly and had generated over $275,000 in its first week alone, which actually only counted 5 days. Since the song was released on a Saturday night, the vast majority of this figure came from the song's 71 million official streams, while it also managed to earn just over $13,500 from 15,000 sales. Euphoria sat at number 3 on the chart, and had made over $210,000 in the same tracking week after racking up more than 45 million streams and 7,500 sales. Mind you, this was the song's second week on the charts. Kendrick had 2 other entries in the top 20, including his initial Drake diss track Like That with Future and Metro Boomin. That song had generated almost $135,000 from nearly 30 million streams and over 3,000 sales in the same week. But that money, of course, will be shared between more parties. Not that it should matter, because the song was released on the 26th of March, which means that it's been going strong consistently. Meet the Grams, which debuted at number 12, had generated an additional $98,000 for thanks to more than 20 million streams and almost 7,000 sales. In total, Kendrick's spate of diss songs had generated over $725,000 in the tracking week of the Not Like Us release, although it's unclear how much of that goes directly into his pocket. For comparison, Drake's diss songs Family Matters and Push-Ups had earned him just about over $200,000 in the same tracking period. Sure, that's not a small amount of money, but when you look at an artist like Drake who has such a strong global presence, these numbers do look a bit small. It wasn't just the songs that made Mr.Morale so much money either. Since the artistry between the two rappers was a hot topic of discussion, fans flocked to Kendrick's discography to try and understand the complexity of his songwriting. As expected, this led to a huge uptick in his album sales and streams. All of his albums sat on the Billboard 200 during the big week of releases, and all of them had enjoyed huge climbs due to an increased interest in the rapper's catalog. Damn occupied its highest spot in a while, as it sat at number 18, up from number 41 the week before. Good Kid, Mad City, which also happens to be the longest-running hip-hop studio album on the Billboard 200, was comfortably sitting at number 23 after being the number 51 album last week. Kendrick's most recent effort, Mr.Morale, The Big Steppers, had also enjoyed a huge climb, rising to number 55 from number 192. This was an important factor to note, because this album was largely considered to be a flop due to the general audience not being able to understand the complex nature of its songs. To Pimp a Butterfly also re-entered that week's chart at number 109 after previously falling out of the top 200. Drake, on the other hand, continued to occupy a multitude of spots on the Billboard 200 but had unfortunately seen his chart positions fall across the board. Drizzy's highest charting album at the time was For All the Dogs, which sat at number 20 after occupying the number 17 spot the week before. Drake had 6 other albums in charting positions, but all had suffered slight slumps. This reflected a larger trend that had seen Kendrick Lamar's streams increase while Drake's fall as fans picked a side in their feud. Of course, a lot of this had to do with the fact that Not Like Us was made in a way to appeal to the masses, which meant that every TikTok video and Instagram reel had this song playing in the background. Another smart move from mr.morale was that he removed all copyright restrictions from his diss tracks, which meant that YouTube creators, influencers, and most importantly, nightclubs could play the song without having to pay any licensing fees. Not only has the song been breaking Spotify records left and right, including multiple records that were previously held by Drake, such as for the hip-hop song with the most streams in 24 hours. And then within 12 days, the song had officially hit 1 million units sold in just 12 days. This was a lot faster than the likes of Taylor Swift and Ariana Grande, with the former being known to inflate her sales figures by releasing multiple versions of the same song or album. In fact, it's among the fastest-selling songs of the entire decade so far to reach the milestone. I hope these numbers have excited you, because now we're going to take a look at how this money is distributed and divided in the music business. And trust me, there's a dark side to all of it, including the beef as well. Chapter 2. How do record labels work anyway? If you don't know already, a record label is essentially a company that helps musicians produce and distribute music to the general audience. They can operate on multiple levels as they deal with direct-to-consumer as well as institutional sales. Now, the traditional method of working is quite standard when it comes to the music industry, but everything has seen a shift in the digital era, so we need to understand that a bit better before getting into the specifics. In an age when music can be streamed and downloaded online, music videos can be seen for free on YouTube, and social media serves up content from anyone to anyone. Saying big labels have had to adjust is the understatement of the century. Record labels have had to get creative in how to market to this industry, which has been evolving ever since digital sales and iTunes became a thing. Considering over 80% of released recordings fail to make a profit, this is a high-risk business for both labels and artists. Independent record labels, as well as major labels, are now very careful as to where they put their money and what artists or bands they should be signing to a record deal. That being said, independent artists and labels are able to promote their recordings for far less than the major labels, allowing them to turn a profit much easier, although when it comes to volumes, they still fall short. Even so, as long as the expenses do not exceed the revenue, it makes sense for these labels to continue with their strategies. This is the reason that there are so many startup indie labels surfacing and major labels are signing fewer and fewer unknown artists. Smaller budgets mean less risk, but they also translate to smaller profits and rewards. The fans would like to state that there are some artists who do it just for the music and the art, but it's nice to pay the rent too. Let's see what people from the industry have to say about this. Rick Camp is from RCI Productions and Master Mix Live, based in Las Vegas. He has worked with several names such as Jennifer Lopez, Mary J. Blige, Beyoncé, Kelly Clarkson, Usher, and Dr. Dre. Record labels make their money off of selling records, but there are all kinds of royalties that the record company collects when a record is played. And that's how they make their money. Every time a record is played on the radio or sold in a record shop or sold online, they get a percentage of it, the artist gets a percentage of it, and the writer gets a percentage of it. This implies that the moment a song is out there for commercial use, it can generate revenue every single time it is played. Camille Hanna works with Serenity West Recording in Los Angeles, California. His working credits include Justin Timberlake, Adele, Snoop Dogg, and Wiz Khalifa. He seems to have a more direct understanding of the truth of the music industry and label executives. Quote, "They make money the way they have for years, which is off of the exploitation of the recordings themselves, and there are a million ways that it is exploited. So now they make money off of every aspect of an artist's career." There's a deal type that's been around for a while called the 360 deal, which means that they participate in all aspects of an artist's career, like touring, merchandising, events, and more. So you, as a label, are now making money off of pretty much every action an artist takes that involves getting income. A 360 deal is sort of the standard operating understanding in most labels when you're talking about a major label. You are going over to Interscope and you're signing a deal and you're like, "I'm going to be the next Justin Bieber," you're going to be signing a deal like that, where they participate in everything, including every t-shirt you sell. They're going to have their own piece of that. It's a giant markup on merchandise. A lot of people have made more off of the things surrounding the music than the music itself. The labels have always figured out ways to get a piece and keep it moving. This makes a lot of sense because with artists expressing the need to possess ownership of their music, record labels have turned it around and started to gain access into other aspects of the artist's earnings, which was something that didn't exist before the streaming era. Zach Phillips of Freck Lab Recording, San Francisco, had this to say. "Here is an oversimplified answer to a complicated question. Record labels make money when their music is purchased or licensed for use. When an artist gets signed to a label, they get money, called an advance, to make a record. When the record is released, the label keeps all the money until they have recouped their expenses, which includes the advance, recording costs, promotion, and legal fees. After these costs have been covered, the label then keeps a percentage of record sale profits." The increasingly popular 360 deal works quite a bit differently. In the 360 deal, the signed artist and the label become business partners in all endeavors, meaning that the label gets a cut of any profits the artists make, even those not related to record sales. This is something that Republic Records was able to work out with Taylor Swift, thus explaining her excessive behavior to release an average of 3 albums a year, even if some of those happen to be newly recorded versions of already existing songs. Something similar was worked out with Drake as well, as he even mentioned it on his diss track, Family Matters. If we look into the specifics of this deal worth $400 million, it's essentially a 360 deal but on steroids. This means that every single time Drake releases a song, merchandise, invests in a TV show, or tours, then Republic Records is going to get a cut out of all that revenue. It could also explain why he's been doing so many shows off late. Maybe there are certain requirements to be met for UMG to pay this sum to Drake. Of course, this is all speculation as I do not have access to the secret details of this deal. Now, let's take an example of how a record deal with a new artist works from the traditional perspective. Let's assume I'm a new artist with a lot of promise and I'm discovered by a record label executive. They tell me that I have the potential to become the next big thing in music and they want to sign me to the label. Me being a newbie with no industry experience will be super thrilled to join the label, so I sign up a traditional deal with them. Now let's assume the deal is worth $1 million for the first year. The label will give me an advance of the $1 million because they are confident that my music sales and streaming revenue will make that much money within the year. Sounds good, doesn't it? However, the label would mostly have me sign away anywhere between 50 to 80% of my masters, which means that they will make as much as 80% of any royalties and other such revenue my music will generate. Also, please note that this is after my music sales cover up the advance as well as any other expenses that the label undertakes for me, such as marketing and distribution. If I'm good enough, then I manage to pull through. Otherwise, I'll be indebted to the label for whatever amount my sales aren't able to pay back. Usually, the label makes back the money by licensing my music to TV shows, events, and other such avenues. I won't have a say in this because the majority of my masters will be owned by the label. At times, the label can also push me to write songs or produce beats for other artists under them without paying me anything or even giving me any credit for my work. It's a savage world out there, but this is the way of the industry. Now, let's assume I do a 360 deal with the label. In this case, I can probably own up to 80% of my masters, which means that I have authority and ownership of my art. However, every single time I sell any merchandise or a tour ticket, or even an endorsement, I have to pay a cut to the label. So in this case, I have authority over the art I create, but I need to make sure that I can generate enough revenue for the label to justify keeping me on contract. In the traditional method, the label won't be able to touch any of my other income sources. They can only make money off my music sales and streaming revenue. Usually, 360 deals work well for big artists like The Weeknd, Taylor Swift, and Ariana Grande because they're minting money anyway. Giving away 20 to 30% of their earnings to a label won't really hurt their pockets. However, there are cases when the artist will be required to hit certain targets. For example, the contract may require the artist to drop at least 1 album per year, along with 3 features and maybe a couple of ads as well. Or they might be required to sell at least 1 million tickets on their tours. It's very complicated as of now, and from the looks of it, record labels are still working out how to make this work best to their advantage. Chapter 3: Why Universal Music Group, or UMG, is the real winner of the beef. Okay, so before I begin this chapter, I should point out that there are quite a few major labels out there. The big 3 are Universal Music Group, Sony Music Group, and Warner Music Group. However, it's safe to say that the biggest of them all is UMG because of subdivisions such as Republic Records and Interscope Records. Want to hear some of their artists? Eminem, Justin Bieber, Lady Gaga, Ariana Grande, Billie Eilish, Taylor Swift, Post Malone, Drake, The Weeknd, Metro Boomin, Nicki Minaj, Lil Wayne, Blackpink, Imagine Dragons, J. Cole, Kendrick Lamar, and the list goes on. Of course, these artists are spread over the various labels under UMG to strike a decent balance. It goes without saying, though, that Republic Records has the biggest hitmakers under its belt. Now, I'm not sure if you guys caught on to this, but there were 2 names that I mentioned, both of whom were under a UMG label. That's right, Drake and Kendrick Lamar. Now think about it. Not Like Us debuted at #1 on the Billboard Hot 100, as well as the multi-metric Hot Rap Songs chart, which combines streaming, radio airplay, and sales data for its ranks. The song was unstoppable and everywhere, with people singing some very questionable lyrics out in the open, as if it's no big deal at all. It also nabbed mr.morale a record from his rival. The song's streaming sum becomes the highest one-week count for a hip-hop title, since YouTube song user-generated content was removed from chart calculations in 2020. This honor was taken from Drake's own Way Too Sexy featuring Future and Young Thug, which racked up 67.3 million streams in its debut week. Of course, these accomplishments went way beyond streaming numbers as well. Not Like Us also registered 5 million radio audience impressions and sold 15,000 downloads in the same tracking period. Kendrick had 2 other diss tracks in the top 10 as well, with Euphoria spending a second week on the charts with 49 million official US streams, like that which is from Future and Metro Boomin's album, We Don't Trust You. They had Kendrick as a feature, and even that song remained in the top 10 despite being a month old at the time. Additionally, Meet the Grams debuted at number 12, which was a pretty big deal for a song without any catchy tunes. Drake was making moves as well, with Family Matters debuting at number 7, which was still a respectable position. The bottom line, though, is that all this revenue was being generated by 2 UMG artists. Sure, Kendrick is not properly signed to Interscope Record yet, but he does distribute his music through them under an exclusive license, which means they do get a cut from all the money he's been making. Drake, on the other hand, is pretty straightforward. Republic Records will get a cut of his cash even if he breathes, so there's no escaping UMG. Now, there were some rumors of the UMG execs trying to step in to quash the beef because of all the damage it was doing to Drake's public image, but there's no official statement as such, so I can just call it speculation. However, it is believable because UMG signed a deal worth $400 million for Drake's entire catalog, which is by no means a small sum. They wouldn't want all that money going down the drain, especially with Drake's sales taking a hit due to the beef. They'd ideally want one of their biggest artists to rake in as much money as he possibly can, and they can't really do that with all the PDF file allegations. What makes even more sense is the fact that Kendrick has not dropped any new diss tracks after Not Like Us, meaning he's not interested in tearing Drake down any further, which could be the result of a little chat between him and the UMG execs. Once again, this is all speculation, so please don't take my word for it, okay? There's also the fact that the Nocta Shoes collaboration between Drake and Nike has performed abysmally so far. It's fair that there wasn't really a lot of hype for this launch, but even by those standards, you'd assume that Drake's name being attached to something would have made some big bucks. The partnership between Nike and Drake is estimated to be valued at around $450 million, so Drake's reputation getting tarnished by Kendrick is not doing any favors to the companies that have invested their big bucks in him. Of course, UMG doesn't need to worry too much about this because with the beef over and Kendrick being adjudged the winner, people will soon forget about it. That's when they can start promoting Drake again and hope for his catalog sales to increase. After all, we live in a generation where TikTok is the main source of finding new songs. Chapter 4. The dark side of the music business. Now that we've understood how the Drake and Kendrick Lamar beef basically made us pay more money to Universal Music, it's time to look at the industry as a whole. The music scene is probably the most popular place in today's generation, especially if you want to become a star. Glitz, glam, money, and fame all come raining down on you, even if you manage to land one hit song. It's no wonder why so many kids grow up wanting to be a musician, because they don't even need to focus on the art. If you have a strong marketing team by your side, you could even sing the alphabet and make loads of cash. Life as an artist has a lot of things that people would want, but what they don't see is what happens behind the scenes. As a beloved career, the music industry only displays what it wants people to see. It shows musicians touring the world, making an impact on their community, able to buy fancy cars and able to give back to their family and people who supported them, but it is filled with strict contracts, strict routines, and the world wanting to watch someone at the top fall. Let's take the example of an artist who is arguably the biggest in the world right now, primarily due to strong marketing and a dedicated cult of fans. Yes, I'm talking about Taylor Swift. On the 9th of April, 2021, she released her re-recorded album Fearless, which had the coveted tag of being Taylor's version. This happened after a long battle to gain the rights to the music she created under Big Machine label group, which owned all her original masters. When Swift was 15 years old, she signed a 13-year contract with Big Machine label group. During this time, she recorded 6 albums, including Fearless, Red, and Reputation. All of these albums were massively successful in terms of commercial sales, but a huge chunk of the revenue from these sales went to the label instead of the artist. Look, I'm aware that it's a bit ironic for an artist like Swift to be the victim, considering that she has always lived a privileged lifestyle thanks to her wealthy parents, particularly her father, Austin Swift, who was a renowned stockbroker. However, Swift's case is the perfect example of an artist getting swindled by her label, so it's important to cover it. Of course, Big Machine label group wasn't her only enemy. In June of 2019, Scooter Braun, a talent manager who represents Justin Bieber, Ariana Grande, and Demi Lovato, announced that he bought Big Machine label group. This infuriated Taylor Swift, and she made sure to let the world know of her disappointment. In a post made on Tumblr, she expressed her sadness over the deal. "This is my worst case scenario," Swift wrote. "This is what happens when you sign a deal at 15 to someone for whom the term loyalty is clearly just a contractual concept." Swift stated that all she wanted was to own the rights to the music she created and that she had been begging for that right for years. This eventually led to her deal with Republic Records, which is widely considered to be a 360 deal, although it hasn't been announced officially. This essentially granted her the rights to her masters, while also providing the label a cut in her merchandise sales and tour revenue, which are easily a lot higher than the money Swift makes from her music. Now, Swift might be able to re-record her previous albums, but the problem lies in the way contracts are written in the music industry. Contracts don't just cover who owns what, but they also cover how much someone will work. This is a big problem within the K-pop community. Being performers, there is a lot of work that goes into performances, but the way it is being executed in the K-pop community is overdone. Members of the band Great Guys spoke to Insider about what their lives look like being a K-pop artist. Health-wise, members are pressured into staying in shape. For the members of Great Guys, this requires going to the gym and dancing in the studio every day. While dancing, the members are also required to wear sandbags on their ankles. "Honestly, we don't have much time for eating," said Ho Ryong, one of the 9 members in Great Guys. On top of this, a lot of artists in the K-pop community can't eat snacks at night, and they can't eat junk food, such as chips or candy. One of the last breaking points in the music industry for many artists is the mental health problems that come along with it. As a society, we have seen the rise and decline of many artists. 2 notable artists are Justin Bieber and Britney Spears. Justin Bieber began his career when he was 15 years old, and his career skyrocketed. While his first single was One Time, Bieber didn't really rise into fame until his song Baby was released. This song received a lot of hate, and while millions adored it, millions also hated him. Being in the spotlight, Bieber faced a lot of ridicule. A lot of people wanted to see him fall, and some had gone as far to attack his character, such as the inspiration for the song Maria, which accused Bieber of being an illegitimate father. For those who wished that Bieber would make a mistake, that is exactly what they got to witness. Bieber grew up in the public eye, and he made decisions that most other teenagers would make. For example, peeing in a bucket. But because he was famous, more people judged him. Years of hate like this, even during a time when he was battling a disease, led him to writing songs such as Lonely. There's also the whole thing with Diddy, but let's not get into that while discussing the specifics of the industry. Another notable downfall in this space was Britney Spears. She began her career on Disney as a Mouseketeer on the Mickey Mouse Club a couple years after leaving the show. Spears started her music career. At the beginning, she received a lot of unwarranted backlash, because while she personally acted more innocent, her music and videos were seen as provocative and sexy. This is an accepted norm whenever it comes to show business, but we must remember that when you become a global icon, you have kids listening to your music as well. This paves the way for a lot of angry parents to voice their opinions. As Spears became more famous, pictures of her were being sold for tons of cash, with the estimated revenue hitting upwards of $1 million. While at the beginning Spears was friendly with the paparazzi, the relationship between them quickly declined. The paparazzi and tabloids painted Spears as a bad mom and a party animal. After constantly being bombarded with paparazzi and what we can assume was mental health issues, Spears shaved off her hair, which was photographed by the same people who covered her every move. After this event and some events that followed, Spears lost the visitation rights to see her children, and she was sent to a mental health facility. During this time, Spears' dad, James Spears, was granted conservatorship over Britney's person, finance, and estate. This was after she asked for her father not to be her conservator. Chapter 5: Music Scams. There are lots of scams that are present in the music industry, with the 360 deal being one way to constantly leech off an artist. Another scam that is prevalent in the music industry is the payola scam. This is when radio stations demand bribes or payola in exchange for airplay. This practice is illegal, but it still happens, as radio stations and record labels collude to get a song played on the radio. The result is that songs that are not popular with listeners get played on the radio, while songs that are popular with listeners do not get played. This can be very damaging for artists, as it can prevent them from getting the exposure they need to become successful. The music industry is also known for its hit-making scams, where songwriters and producers buy and sell hit songs like commodities. This is a very profitable business, as a hit song can generate millions of dollars in royalties. The problem is that these hit songs are often not written or produced by the artist who sings them, but by anonymous songwriters and producers who are paid a flat fee for their work. It's prevalent in a lot of female artists such as Rihanna, Ariana Grande, and Dua Lipa. Just look at the writing credits of their songs, especially the older ones, and you'll know what I'm talking about. This is a scam that has been happening for decades in the music industry, and it has been very detrimental for artists and songwriters. Another scam that is prevalent in the music industry is is the fake streaming scam. This is when record labels artificially inflate the number of streams a song receives on platforms like Spotify, Apple Music, and YouTube. This is done by creating fake accounts that stream the song repeatedly, or by paying people to stream the song. This can be very damaging for artists, as it can prevent them from getting the royalties they are entitled to. The music industry is also known for its credit-stealing scams, where artists are not given credit for their work. This can happen when a record label releases a song that an artist wrote or produced, but does not give them proper credit or compensation for their work. This can hurt artists bad, as it basically prevents them from getting the recognition they deserve for their work. Please note that such scams are only applicable to small artists, songwriters, and producers. You won't really see a lot of this injustice being done with big names, because the labels need to keep their cash cows happy. Chapter 6. Avoiding the exploitation. The music industry is known for its cutthroat business practices, and unfortunately, many rappers have fallen victim to scams by record labels. In such cases, it's only about who's got it in them to fight the system and overcome the odds. Here are some examples of rappers who were scammed by their labels and what they did about it. The first one is of the legendary rapper 50 Cent. In 2002, Curtis James Jackson III signed a deal with record label Columbia Records. However, the label was later absorbed by Sony Music, and 50 Cent claimed that Sony failed to properly promote his music and refused to release his second album. He eventually sued the label and was released from his contract, allowing him to release his music independently and launch his own successful label, G-Unit Records. If he hadn't done that, then we probably never would have seen albums such as Curtis and Massacre. Next up is another legendary rapper who's under a bit of heat due to his affiliations with questionable individuals. Yes, I'm talking about Jay-Z. In the late 90s, Sean Carter signed a deal with Def Jam Recordings. However, he later claimed that the label failed to pay him the royalties he was owed for his music. He sued the label and settled out of court, eventually buying out his own contract and leaving the label to launch his own successful label, Rockefeller Records. The rapper Lil Wayne also had a legal battle with his label, Cash Money Records. He claimed that the label failed to pay him the royalties he was owed for his music, and that they were also keeping him from releasing new music. He eventually sued the label, and in 2020 he was released from his contract with Cash Money Records. He then started his own label, Young Money Records. This was a heavily covered incident, and it was big news for all his fans when he finally escaped the clutches of Cash Money Records. Next up, we have the focus point of this video, the one and only musical bogeyman, Kendrick Lamar. Mr.Morale also had a legal dispute with his former label, Top Dog Entertainment, over unpaid royalties and other issues. He eventually filed a lawsuit against the label and was able to resolve the dispute and reclaim the rights to his music. If you've been following the beef, you'll know that Drake brought this up several times in his response to Like That, which was push-ups. The final example I want to give is not of a rapper, but one of the biggest pop stars in the world right now, The Weeknd. So his story is a bit lengthy, so I'll keep it short. He was homeless and then started to blow up because of his mixtapes back in 2011. That's when Drake picked him up and had him contribute to his most acclaimed album, Take Care. All of this was to sign The Weeknd to his own OVO Records. However, at the age of 21, The Weeknd was smart enough to say no to Drake, and he ended up signing to Republic Records, and that too with majority ownership of his masters. Plus, this was not a 360 deal, which made it even all the more impressive for a newbie in the industry. He seemed to have it all figured out, and it's worked out for him quite well if you look at the numbers he's doing right now. In each of these examples, the artists were either smart enough not to sign their life away, or they were able to take legal action against their labels to settle or break their contract, allowing them to release their music independently and launch their own successful labels. This shows that while the music industry can be tough, artists do have legal options to protect themselves from being scammed by record labels. It's important for artists to be aware of their rights and to seek legal advice if they feel they are being treated unfairly. Chapter 7. Conclusion. It is worth noting that these examples are just a small fraction of the artists who got scammed by the labels, and there are many more stories of the same nature. But the most important part is that the artists should be more aware of their rights and should not be afraid to speak up and take action when they feel they are being treated unfairly. In a nutshell, the music industry has its dark side, but by being aware and taking proactive steps, artists can protect themselves and achieve success on their own terms. It's important for artists to stay informed, be proactive and assertive, and work with professionals who have the knowledge and experience to help them navigate the industry. Like, share, and subscribe if you liked the video, and feel free to suggest any topics you'd like to see in my future videos. See you soon.